Okay, with Michael Dibasio-Ornelas, the Yorkie Werewolf is the feature film played at the Horror Underground Film Festival. This is I would call this more of a comedy than a horror. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, yeah, I think it is. I mean, people I think, are a little more used to hearing horror comedy, which is, why we do that. But
Yeah.
it's definitely more, I would say, more comedy than horror. Although some kind of mainstream audiences, well, what I would call mainstream audiences that have seen it, um, have gotten a little squeamish at the gore, which to me wasn't that bad, but you know,
Yeah, well, like it's all about the viewer, right? So yeah, I
yeah,
thought it was a little squeamish, to be fair.
yeah,
But okay, so the tagline is that a rebellious teen witch is turned into a tiny werewolf.
yeah,
I want to see that movie. I guess I did.
yeah, yeah,
So where did this kind of concept start with? You wrote the script. I think your wife helped you produce it, right?
yeah.
And you directed it. So where did this kind of concept come up for you?
It's funny. I uh, so my second feature came out in the middle of lockdown, and it was just a tough time to have like a small independent film come out. And I had left my day job that I was at for a really long time, and I was freelancing. And for the first time in a while, I was just kind of thinking, okay, I made two features. I'm proud of both of them, but they're more like art house, like critical hits than critical underground hits than making enough money that people are like coming to us. Um, and so I started hitting the phones and like calling everyone in my network and saying like, hey, I need like I want to make something, or I want to like work, but I don't know what to do. And one of my friends who works pretty steadily and who got started in horror and thrillers, he he said, well, I know a few people that if you want to make a horror movie, like maybe I can get you a few $100,000 if it's like a script that they respond to. And I said, well, I have this like weird idea that just like popped into my head, which was at that time just a three-word pitch, the Yorkie Werewolf. And I started kind of testing it. I tested it on Rebecca, who's, we're married, we've worked together for a long time, but she kind of is a tell it like it is person. So if I give her a pitch and she doesn't think it's a win, she won't say anything. But I did. I said, I have a three-word pitch for you. And she laughed. And then I just wrote it because maybe there was a chance of financing, which actually that opportunity didn't work out. We ended up raising money in a different way. Um, and then like I think a year after we shot it, something came up on Facebook Memories, and apparently I asked like the joke, like what if someone were turned into a werewolf, but it was a Yorkie, like almost 10 years ago. I just forgot. So
Wow. So then it's kind of like it worked out, I guess, right? Because you wrote the script thinking that this happens so many times in film, right? Where you write something based on an anticipation for something to happen. That doesn't happen, and then you kind of like revert to your own kind of funding, and you made this film. So yeah, that's amazing.
yeah, in the back of my head, I was thinking like, okay, like this is this is a small enough budget that if this doesn't work out, I can continue shopping it, um, or I can try to raise this amount on my own. And that's what we ended up doing.
So you got me hooked. I'm watching your film, and you got me hooked with the first like 10 minutes, right? We're like three generations of witches in one room. It's a family. I'm like, oh, he's making a family movie about witches. Which is great. And then of course there's twists and turns, and but the dialogue, and like, because I'm just breaking it down from the second viewing, the dialogue and the performances is just so, it's there. It's like there's a certain rhythm, there's a certain pace that
Yeah.
you kind of nailed. Was that all in the script? Like, was there any improvise? I'm just curious about that
Yeah.
initial scene, because you grab the audience with that scene. You don't start with the horror scene, you don't start with the fright, you start with that scene, which is an interesting way to start the movie.
Yeah. I mean, well, the movie does start with the wolf hunting some
Sorry, yeah,
mobsters.
no,
But
that's a
yeah,
teaser,
you're right.
right?
It
Yeah,
goes right into that
yeah,
that other scene.
yeah.
Yeah, I get it. So I think the answer is a mix. I had a lot of fun with the script. Like with the dialogue. on through like the plot. As silly as a movie as it is, you can kind of trace a plot through it, and even with the characters, you can trace arcs. Um, and that's I'm glad for that. But really, I was just trying to write down the next most ridiculous thing I can think of
Yeah.
within those parameters. And then I think two other things. Rebecca deserves a lot of credit. She's such a good actor, which also makes her a great producer. But it particularly she was the casting director for this film, which she kind of has done in our previous movies also.
Oh, so
Also,
she plays the mom.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And she, I just she handled kind of like the first round of like auditions, and then we had a short list of like two or three people her major role, or kind of on down, maybe fewer. But I just feel like between her and the actors themselves, like just being right for the roles and taking that perfect approach of I'm taking this comedy really seriously. It just elevated and like helped everything in the script pop. And then something that I learned with this movie that I hadn't really gone through before, but I've heard and read, is there's also we cut a lot of jokes that didn't work because sometimes jokes don't work. Like
Yeah.
the script was like packed with jokes, particularly in the dialogue. So some scenes are just way shorter than they were, or we cut a line of dialogue at the top or at the bottom that wasn't landing, and it could have been we were rushing and the actor didn't have time to get it right, which was probably not that often. But more often it was just like, oh, this is a joke that I tried that didn't work, and it's good because we had enough volume of jokes that
Yeah.
when we cut those out, it still works afterwards.
Well, that's a good lesson because it's like you said, like it's not, it may work on paper, right? It may even work in the rehearsal, but it doesn't mean that it's going to work when you get the lights and you get the performances and you get the camera angles. Like there's so many factors involved in something, and it's just yeah, it's something. And then, but if you have a surplus of it, then you can edit, I guess, right?
Yeah, and there's even like there's some jokes that are still in the movie that I think are so funny that either only get a handful of laughs when
Yeah.
people watch it, or they don't laugh. I'm like, I don't care. It's just like that's my joke. But
So this actress who plays the teenager, like it's a coming of age story, of course, because she becomes a werewolf, right? So it's a great concept because like it's like a metaphor for a teenager getting out of their heads and stop being selfish and like because that's how you set the tone, right? Like she doesn't care about her grandmother, she doesn't care about anybody. She's like, and then of course she's got these powers, so basically she can just like kill her boyfriend if she wants to,
yeah,
which
she
is
almost
fun.
does. Well, she does actually.
I
Yeah.
don't mean to laugh, but it was
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
And basically it's like, and then yeah, but she's got to learn to basically, it's like a superhero, right? She's got to learn to control her powers and use it for good, I guess, right?
Yeah, and that's it's funny you bring that up because the one of the ways like I got our first like big investment in this movie was like it's an investor we've worked with before, but we still have to pitch.
Yeah.
So we had dinner and like I pitched him, and I had a one sheet like done up that was really just like, concept art that I had paid for and like something I threw together in Canva. But he first of all he thought the premise was funny, but then he was looking at the art and he's like, oh, this feels like a comic book movie. And I was like, oh yeah, maybe kind of. But yeah, Isabella was just you know, she I remember Rebecca when she was casting, she's obviously Jenny's the most important role, um, other than the werewolf, who is also Jenny, but it's two different actors.
Yeah.
Um, the Rebecca said we got this tape, and we gave there's a scene where she's turning while she's walking with her vampire friend slash love interest, and she starts turning into the werewolf and she starts like barking uncontrollably. And Isabella's like self tape, she just like went all out with that scene, like with like her barking was just really good. And so that just told us that this is a person who gets what we're doing, is having fun, and is also just, even though it's a ridiculous movie, is being very professional and committed.
Yeah.
And she took that all the way through um, production, which was a relief for me because I've gotten a little used to having Rebecca in a lead role, which obviously she can't do when the lead is a teenager. Um, and it was just a relief to have someone with an equal level of professionalism and craft.
You brought up something interesting when right just now, because the film needs to be in their reality, right? Like it's like they need to be grounded that this is these performers' reality. It can't be like over like it's over the top, of course, and it's funny, but it still has to be real, if that makes
Yeah,
sense to them.
yeah. I think I think especially if you look at our two leads and our main supporting, like Isabella, as I mentioned, Risa, who was just phenomenal as the werewolf, and then Jacob and Juan and Rebecca, kind of on down through the cast. Like the goons were great too. I mean, we just had so much fun with those guys. But yeah, absolutely, that's I would go back again to the casting being successful, but also everybody everybody came and they worked hard and they had done their homework. I'll say also that we with all of our features and all of our shorts and all of our productions, we take a very we're very professional, we're very organized. We work really hard, even though we have historically had low budgets, but we also don't believe in like 13, 15-hour days. And like we believe that you can be professional and organized enough, even at a low budget, and strategic enough that you don't have to over crank your cast and crew. And so I think it's, when you get on a set and your experience has been, oh, these producers are organized and they care about me, and then you get on set and you see it actually happening in practice, it just sets a tone from the beginning that 1 or 2 days you're going to have some issues and you're going to go over. But
Yeah.
we didn't go into overtime very often, which was also a budget thing with SAG. Like we just didn't have the money, so we had to make our days. But like I think that's a big factor too. And we heard that back from people, because this was our first this is the first film I produced out of New York City in a really long time. And we had some difficulties, just it being such a small market here in Vermont, doing things the way that we had done in New York,
Yeah.
which we were expecting. But Rebecca and I felt more tense with this production than we had in our last few. But apparently, like, it was mostly us, because the cast and crew felt very taken care of.
But but you also said in the blog interview that you have a family too, right? So you don't want to,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
you don't want to work, say, 17 hours a day, right? When you got to take care of, and then didn't your wife get pregnant during the making of the film?
Yeah, so when for our second feature, The Sleepless, we found out that Rebecca was pregnant with our first daughter um, right before we were going to production, and we kind of had to like rush pre-pro like by a few weeks, because we had to get on the cusp of like this character can't that she's playing a lead character can't be
Okay.
noticeably pregnant. And we had our daughter, pandemic happened, moved to Vermont. Um, you know, everything kind of settled, ended up picking this movie. Um, and then a few weeks after we wrapped, she was feeling really sick and we couldn't figure out why. And eventually it was because apparently our second daughter was also in utero on set with this movie. We just didn't know. So it's been, especially this last year, it's been finishing an independent film while you're like paying the rent is always hard, but doing it with like a 4-year-old and a newborn, or 3-year-old and a newborn, now a 4-year-old and almost 1-year-old, it's that's why I'm sitting here outside with like in between things on my
No,
like
I get it.
fifth coffee of the morning.
I relate. I'll just put it that way. I
Mm,
totally get it.
yeah.
Yeah, it's not an easy, but I guess basically when you make your next film, I guess you're gonna have another baby then. I guess that's how it works.
No, we have taken measures.
Oh, okay. But it's okay. It's all right.
I want to keep making films. I'm two is enough kids for me.
Maybe that's a film too, right? Taking measures, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
because that is kind of a horror film too, right? So all right. So tell me about, so you, yeah, there's a like you got all these kind of like small roles, I guess, right? And they're like you because you're bringing up casting and you loved your wife and she's great, but like you got some but they're all like in these, like the guy at the the fishing store, the like these all these kind of like distinct characters that you got in this film. They're fantastic, and they're only, I guess they only came in for one day. You got all these kind of minor roles coming in for one day, and they just kind of nailed the scene. Lots of dialogue too. You give them everybody all these kind of like was that done on purpose, or is that just in the script? Or I'm just curious about that process because it's like it's
Yeah. Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I can always be kind of heavy with dialogue. Like my first few features like are heavy on monologues. And even, there's not too many monologues in this movie, but I'll let people talk for a while. Partially it's because you have to do this within reason, but I think people do talk for longer than, of course, like we take liberties when we're making movies, but you know, as ridiculous as this movie is, like it's like, okay, like I'm looking at it more of, hey, the whole lens through which we're watching this movie is like a funhouse mirror, right?
okay.
Funhouse lens. And but that doesn't change once you get on the other side, the fact that these people would, like you alluded to before, these people would consider themselves real. That's how actors work. So I think, yes, with the scripting, like I take that point of view. I also, you know, maybe it's kind of based on my roots of like writing, you know, like my first um feature had really just like one main character, two supporting, and a couple of small roles. Most of it rested on like three women, three characters. Second was a two-hander, a lot of dialogue, but like strategically, let's break that up with a few characters who each have something to do and say that's real. And then this time, I think it's kind of an evolution of that, which is okay, if I'm going to bring someone on screen, yes, of course, there's going to be a couple of like under fives, like the guy in the booth at the cafe who's
Yeah.
like been made into a vampire coffee, like, but with the rest of them, I wanted to give each character, if not like a full arc, because some of them are only on screen for a few minutes, at least like a sense that if the camera were to keep rolling, that you would get that. And I have to credit the actors again for doing their homework and sitting with that stuff. And they did have, even so, for instance, Cliff is a early fan favorite from screenings. You mentioned the guy at the gun shop, and that that was um that was one of those things where it was good that I was the producer and the director, because as the director, uh, I needed that scene to go the way that it eventually did.
Mhm.
As the producer, I had to take a significant budget hit because of the way the schedule shook out. Um, Roy, to his credit, was fine with this. Well, also he's getting paid for
Yeah.
for like being held, but we
Yeah.
held him for like 4 days, just because of the way um, the best we could do with the shooting schedule and locations, like juggling and all that. And I felt it was really important for him to show up in the movie again. I don't want to spoil anything,
Yeah.
but like that, he he really was only on set for like 1.25 days, but and it's fine, but he was paid for a lot more than that. And it's just one of those things where it's like that to me felt worth the risk, so to speak, in terms of what would eventually happen with the film, which seems to be proving itself true.
So who plays the werewolf in the costume?
Uh, yeah, so her name is Risa May. She's an actor and a pretty accomplished voiceover actor as well. That we met through an agency, and again, like when we cast her, we were like, oh, this clearly someone who's going to be pleasant to work with and who's going to bring something to the character. But even then, I wasn't expecting the level of like character work she did just with her body and her gestures, and she was just so game for pretty much anything. And we didn't ask her anything crazy, but she was just a pleasure to work with, and she brought so much uh to what I feel is the success of the movie. And also I want to credit her and Isabella for something that's hard to do, which is, I feel when you watch the movie, it very clearly feels like Jenny is one character, even though there were two people playing her, which is a joy to be able to say.
Well, because she's shorter, I guess, right? Like I thought it was like a child
Yeah.
actor that was playing the werewolf.
No, we had to obviously like, after we got the budget, I was like, okay, how are we going to handle like my vision is like the story is going to be kind of like the underdog, so to speak. Um, but what if someone were turned into a werewolf and they were smaller? Oh, okay, that's funny, but like, all right, is it? But like, she over the course of the movie, yes, she gets dealt a uh what we could call like a less good hand, where it's like she got turned into a werewolf, but she got smaller instead of bigger. But it turns out, like she says, she's just as dangerous.
Yeah.
I just kind of I kind of started thinking I didn't really think we were going to be able to afford, or it was the right move to do CGI or anything. So I kind of went and I was like, what did Lucas do with the Ewoks? And he just
I
hired
was thinking the same
small
thing.
actors.
Yeah.
And so, that's the route that we took. And I did want to like go back in the script and say like, okay, is this respectful? Um, and I think it is. I think it's an empowering story. With
I was thinking a cross between Chewbacca and the Ewoks. My
Yeah,
because it has that Chewbacca vibe to it, but then it's like its own person, right? But yeah, okay, that makes a lot of sense. Well, it's a great film. What did you think about? We sent the audience to you. What did you think? What the audience had to say about the film?
yeah. It was. I think I watched it like after I finished like a 12-hour workday, and I was just like, it was it's very gratifying, right? And even some of the actors have watched it. Like Roy, the guy who plays Cliff, like told me he watched it and like got a big smile on his face when the woman in the feedback video said that he was her favorite character. So yeah, I appreciate that. It's nice.
So the hopefully, I wish the best of luck with the film. I hope it's doing well. And like I said, you don't have to say the budget, but it's like it you can tell that all the money that you have in the film is all the money that you make to make the film is in this film and then some. So you definitely maximize the production for sure. And like
Yeah,
I said, no CGI. You just basically did what you did, and it's like it works tone wise. Like a very hard film tone wise for like 80 minutes to like keep that tone and pace, and you nailed it. I'm sure that the editing process must have been a very like precision, like it must have been a very meticulous editing process to kind of nail that tone.
yeah, yes and no. Like I historically just the that I get a lot of our budget is kind of, for better or worse, shooting the edit.
Yeah.
We did do quite a bit of what I would call coverage. I tend to be more strategic about that and mix coverage with some kind of more premium shots. But on both fronts, I get a call out Seth Grant, who is our cinematographer and who edited the movie, because I just didn't feel up to it. And the few editors I've worked with in the past, like they weren't available. And I think he just brought so much creatively that was additive that wasn't in the script, um, that I don't think it would have been the movie that it is, or as successful as it is as a tone wise or as a comedy without Seth's contributions.
Well, I wish you the best of luck with the film. This is an interesting podcast because all these like this is a busy coffee shop. It seems like because people were coming in and out of the door. A couple times, a lady like had her coffee and she was like, "Oh no, I forgot my cream or something," and she like ran back in. It was just like there's some funny background performers in this podcast.
It's a
So
scene. Yeah, it's a scene. I hope that wasn't too noisy. I
no,
don't
no,
hear
it's
anything
perfect. Yeah,
okay,
there's no
good.
noise. It's just like it's a perfect. Yeah, you nailed it. So yeah.
Okay.
So do you work at this coffee shop or you're just like sitting outside the coffee shop?
Well, it's too loud in there, so it's like there's just some outdoor seating,
Yeah,
and I thought I
yeah.
would take a gamble. So
It
hopefully, it seems like it
seems
worked
like
out.
business is doing well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah,
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for your time. And like I said, I wish the best of luck with the film. I hope it does get you some distribution. Hope it does well.
yeah, we got it. It's
You got it?
we're yeah. So we'll be out on digital and DVD in late summer, early fall.
That's amazing. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm looking forward to I'm gonna help push this film as much as I can. So let's talk again when you make your next film.
All right. Thanks.